So although we started a little bit late, but we still have about 15 minutes almost for questions and comments from the audience, or also if panelists have something they want to question or comment to one another. I think I will immediately look around to see if we have any questions or comments. And if you need a moment to think about those, then I'll start with one myself that I will direct to, I think, all the panelists. And if the presenters of the study want to say something as well, they're welcome to that. If we look at the results of the study and also of other discussions going on, it appears as if people are maybe not as concerned as at least Simon would like them to be. And I'm wondering, if people are not concerned about something, should we tell them to be concerned? Should we, who are better informed, maybe who study and analyze these things and look upon them more from a human rights perspective or so, should we say, well, you should be concerned? Or should we just accept if people are not? Then that may seem odd to us, but that may be the way it is, that we're artificially creating a concern because of what we thought was correct earlier. So. Yes, I guess that you would like to start to answer to that, so please.
Okay, just a word. I mean, I think it is the state's responsibility to be clear, transparent. I like the idea of a transparent society, a transparent government. When I say society, I don't mean we should all be any more transparent than we already are. I don't believe in communitarianism to that extent. But yes, a transparent state that is honest and has a contract with its people should be honest about risks. I mean, you know, if we look, I don't know to what extent this is a public concern here, but anybody who is worried about the Snowden revelations should have been told by their government that that risk exists, instead of that government getting into bed with the violators, as more than a third of European states have done. There should have been a level of honesty and transparency so that you could have a dialogue as a nation. When you look, for example, at the history of, look at employee health and safety, industrial health and safety. That wasn't a conspiracy, you know, let's not tell people the risks. In fact, the reverse became an issue where the people didn't have to, they were aware of the problems of workplace health and safety. They were aware of the mortality rate of workers in many industries. But there was a level of increasing openness about those risks. But you know what? People didn't have to worry about, you know, dealing with this themselves. There was an acceptance that the government and the employer, the companies, had to take this responsibility on and be transparent about how they're protecting workers. The same with sanitation and public health. So yes, I do think there needs to be that level of openness with the public.
We discussed it before in terms of the education seems to be the easy fallback. We should be more educated, because if we're not educated, then how do we know to make those decisions? But there is also the sort of, after we contemplate about the things, after we contemplate about the risk, after we read the privacy conditions, we decide, who cares? Still, we'll make a little bit of more informed choice. But I think it's also down to the whole notion of literacy. We are in the very distinct need of understanding the information literacy of modern age, and the technological possibilities, the affordances, they are running away faster than our school system or public education system can cope. But unless we say that together with the traditional alphabet and together with practicing your letters in the perfect shapes, you need to know about issues of data getting out of the hand, running away from you, being able to be stored, multiplied, and divided and spread across the internet, unless you are taught that from very early age onwards, unless you accept this is the rule of society, so to say nowadays, Unless we do that, we have no right to expect people to make informed choices. And then we'll become a kindergarten, because governments and companies can't be the babysitters of the individuals, because that will be violating their privacy. That will be violating their freedom of expression. That will be making your decisions. You're not allowed to put that party picture online. You know that, do you? If government would send me notices like that, I would be really, really scared. That would be the sort of flip side of the whole notion of loss of privacy. So there has to be a reasonable amount of education, but we can't build gated communities, we can't build kindergartens of our own communities. So there is this notion of self-efficacy and also the notion of agency down to every individual.
I agree. I think that there's a lot of focus on education and on making more informed choices. I find it that when you tell people that they should be concerned about something, it's not very effective unless you give examples or give reasons why that might affect that individual person. I think something that we hear a lot that was mentioned by some of the panelists and the study is people come back with the response that they have nothing to hide, so they're not concerned, which I think we need to move beyond this way of thinking about privacy and think more broadly in terms of something the report mentioned, which is this idea of informational self-determination and having the power, as Simon mentioned, over one's information, how it's being used, and how that's impacting your life. So I think people still think about privacy in terms of not having something to hide. They haven't done anything illegal. They don't have anything that the government might arrest them for example. But we need to move beyond that and really think about and understand the ways that governments and companies are taking every little thing we do online, every kind of data trail that we're leaving, and might be using that in automated ways to offer certain services or not offer services, things along those lines in terms of determining what you have access to. And in the United States, for example, we're finding that the president issued a report about big data and the impact of big data. And one of the sections of the report mentioned that there is this concern about big data reinforcing discriminatory practices that have occurred for hundreds of years, and kind of supercharging those practices, making them worse. So I think we need to move beyond just this idea of I have nothing to hide, and again, as Simon mentioned, kind of taking more active control over our information, and thinking more broadly about how privacy is being impacted.
Thank you. Do you want to add something now? Okay, so then we have some questions. I see one over there, and I see one over there. I think we can take a couple of questions. So we have a microphone. We start with the gentleman in that far end there, and then we had another question there in the middle row. So if you get the microphone next, so please go ahead.
Yeah, thank you.
And if you just say who you are as well, briefly.
Yes, Eero Allisto, and from the local NGO Pirate Party. That's not a party actually yet, but yeah. I liked Professor Simon Davies' comment on this research because, though it did reflect some notion of people need to watch out for themselves on the net and take care of themselves. This lack of skepticism towards government, it was alarming. And there's a stereotype about Estonians that are actually quite stoic and skeptic, but it might seem that in this case it goes the wrong way, because the skepticism is often about how can they use my data against me. It's we have our own state now, so what will our good state do wrong against us? And this is a wrong kind of skepticism in my view, because governments all around the world have been misusing data and misusing practices that concern data For example, with spying software like FinSpy, which was probably used by Estonian government as well, that was actually the software developer was like selling it had many bugs and many like problems with it, but. And from that, I would like to stress out that for individual rights, it is important to protect privacy, but transparency goes for government, and healthy skepticism for government is required. We should have presumption of innocence in place, that there wouldn't be mass surveillance and wouldn't be misuse of technologies in the modern world. And yeah, that's my comment. Thanks.
Okay, we take one more question from in the middle there, and then we give the panelists a chance to comment. Or do we have maybe a third one as well? Before, but okay. Please go ahead.
Mul oleks üks niisugune küsimus, ma palun tõlgid ehk panevad selle inglise keelde neile, kes eesti keelt ei oska. Avorin Tereping, Riigi Infokommunikatsiooni Sihtasutus ja siis ka Tallinna Ülikooli ma esindan. Selline üsna praktiline küsimus. Andmeid inimeste kohta, me räägime siin riigi kontekstis, me räägime internetist põhiliselt. On ka teisi tehnoloogiaid, mis lubavad inimese liikumise kohta näiteks infot saada. Üsna laialt rakendatakse autode sõitude jälgimiseks ettevõtete poolt GPS-süsteeme. Selle põhjendus on loomulikult see, et autod on töövahend, ettevõte tahab neid võimalikult ökonoomselt kasutada, kuid paratamatult sellega koguneb ettevõttele üsna palju andmeid selle kohta, kuidas ta töötajad siis ringi liiguvad. Ja minu küsimus ongi see, kas selles uuringus kuidagiviisi ka see küsimus esile kerkis ja üleüldse kas see, kui tööandja annab oma töövahendi töötajale kasutada ja siis jälgib, tal on võimalus jälgida iseasi, kuidas ta neid tulemusi kasutab, kas see võiks kuidagi olla ka sellesama meie tänase arutelu objektiks või siis privaatsuse rikkumise näiteks?
Okay, thank you. I see that the clock is ticking, so we won't have time for more rounds of questions. So I have one more here in the front. And then if we have any more questions, this is your one and only chance. So we could take one more if we have a fourth question as well. Okay, so we have a fourth question, so I'm afraid I have to close the debate. Please keep it short then to those asking questions. So.
Anto Veldre is my name. Let's consider me as a InfoSec professional. And I have a question to Professor Davis. My standpoint is that privacy, as we see it today, is a result of industrial society created by Indo-Europeans. Could it be that in post-industrial society, where Finno-Ugris are most successful today, there are other realities? I remember about European project Tabula Rasa, which noted that in year 2030 it's only needed a microscopic part of GDP to fully monitor all citizens, because it's technically possible. Could it be that in post-industrial society we will have the new normality, which means that technically the privacy is not achievable anymore? Thank you.
Okay, and then we take the final question from over there.
My name is Reed Nelson. I'm from the National Democratic Institute. It seems to me that attitudes toward privacy are a product of the legal structures and the data structures we have, that they tend to follow that. We have a model where data is centrally located, the legal structures define how that's collected and access to it, and we as individuals have to often access the collected data. My question is, are there technological solutions, or is anybody working on technological solutions that could reverse that structure so that we collect our own data and we are in control of the access? And it seems to me that the legal structure then could support that, and public attitudes then might change.
Okay, thank you very much. As we started a little bit late, I'm going to infringe on your privacy in the extent of violating your coffee break a little bit. So I'm going to give now the speakers about 2 to 2.5 minutes each to comment on all of those questions. And we're going to start with Laura then, who was the last speaker, and take the inverted order. So.
Sure. Let's see. Where to start?
Anything you wish to comment on? I mean, some were not directed to you, maybe.
I think maybe to address the last question about technology solutions, and in terms of reversing the current structure, and I think the emphasis there again is on who has control over the data. I think there are more efforts to, again, make people aware and when they're engaging with different platforms, aware of what information they're giving up and how that might be used. I think there's still a focus on companies, particularly, are the ones who are gathering that data. I don't think we've yet moved to a case where people have control over their data to that degree. I think the way that technology is developing and these applications are developing, they're all predicated on having that information and using it. But to a broader point, I think it's really important to start focusing on that and how technology companies are, again, programming or creating their products in a way that they're not necessarily thinking about the social or policy implications. I think just this morning I was reading an article in the Wall Street Journal, which mentioned that, technology companies, especially from the United States or this culture of Silicon Valley, have a habit to make a product first and then think about the implications second, the policy implications, the regulatory implications second. And I think there's beginning to be a strong push to reverse that, given all the problems that some of these companies are finding themselves in. I'll leave it there.
I'll take the question that was sort of most directly oriented towards the study itself. So we didn't study the GPS systems, but we did study the question about whether people feel that their employers are part of their privacy violations. And this is a raising debate all over the world in terms of the employers, together with the equipment that they provide for work, they also, or together with the contract for work, they also take themselves the right to monitor people's activities, both online and also in the physical space. So in Estonia, our respondents, 2/3 of them were concerned about the notion of the employer watching them in their and being threat to their privacy. We didn't specify as to via which tools, so it might be the truck drivers being concerned about it being watched through GPS, or the office workers being concerned about their emails being read through company server, so it might be all those things. So it is an issue that we need to be aware, together with the whole debate about state, about the companies who we get services for, but also the employers are part of that equation of whom do we lose the privacy for. And we haven't actually discussed much about the whole idea of other people. We've been more concerned about the big players, about the ones who have significant outside power over us, but the other players, our friends, neighbors, co-workers, who are also part of our privacy equations, are also part of the, actually are the biggest source of actually felt loss of privacy. So this is another side of the coin. We don't feel that the abstract government collecting data about us is
that much of a threat, but a colleague posting a party picture on a social media is significantly closer at home and may actually be the way how we can communicate the notion of privacy to the people. But I give floor to closing remarks to Simon.
Before I begin, is there anybody here from the Estonian Data Protection Authority? I can't see with the lights. Just yell out if there's anybody from the authority here. There is nobody from the Data Protection Authority in this room? There is? Good. I thought I was going to go on a rant there for a moment. Just a couple of... the reason I ask that is I do think a lot of this does come down to the relationship, and the Data Protection Authority is a good... potentially, they are empowered and entrusted to help empower people. And I've noticed something very interesting. I was speaking at a meeting in Paris on Monday at UNESCO with the French Prime Minister. And remarkably, the Article 29 working group of all of the supervisors, the data protection supervisors, has produced a political document. They actually, well, the British didn't agree with this, but they don't agree with anything political when it comes to privacy. But all of the data protection authorities have produced this great political statement about the importance of our information and protecting it. So I commend you to read this on the Article 29 website, if you get the chance. But one thing I will just close with is, this is a political issue. It's a political issue in the sense that it should make people passionate and make them aware that we're living in an unstable time. One of I think the first question related to the presumption of innocence. The problem with surveillance these days, and coming back to the structures, is that it reverses that presumption of innocence. Whether it's surveillance on the roads, or whether it's national security. Do you know that Estonians have been spied on by your British friends? Government security, the GCHQ agency, the biggest spy agency outside of the NSA, has operated more than 36 programs to spy on the rest of Europe, including one called Optic Nerve. So I don't know if there's any Yahoo Messenger users here. I won't ask you to identify yourself. If you used Yahoo Cam, there's a very good chance that you have been spied on by the British, who are your European colleagues. Now, where's the anger about this? Where is the passion that one of your member state colleagues in Europe was spying on innocent Estonian citizens, right, just to establish what you might call a norm of behavior, right? And if you fall within that norm of behavior with all this additional surveillance, then you're fine. If you fall outside of that norm, then you're a suspect. That's the new data surveillance empire, and that's what we have to destroy, and there are tools being created to help do that, but it's going to be a tough road.
Okay, well, on that cheerful note, we will go for a coffee break. And I think the organizers will tell how long a coffee break you're allowed to take in order to not sort of disturb the program too much. But let's first thank our panelists.